explore the Ross Sea of Antarctica with Heritage Expeditions. We arrived in Port Bluff, the southern tip of New Zealand, where our expedition to the Sub-Antarctic and Ross Sea began. Standing on the pier, it suddenly hit me. We were heading for some of the most remote places on Earth. The Snares are one of New Zealand's remote subantarctic islands, sitting about 200 kilometers south of Stewart Island. These rugged, uninhabited islands are a wildlife sanctuary protected from human impact. No one can set foot here, but Expedition Zodiac cruises offer a close-up look at one of the most untouched ecosystems on the planet. Thick vegetation covers the land, home to seabirds like the Snares crested penguin, a species that is endemic to the Snares and can only be seen here. These small, yellow-crested penguins nest in dense colonies beneath the trees, shuffling between the undergrowth and the shoreline. One of the highlights is watching them navigate the famous penguin slide, a massive slope of granite stretching from the sea to the forested top of the northeast island. Fur seals haul out on the rocks, while bowlers, albatross, and giant petrels soar overhead. The sheer number of birds is staggering. This is nature at its wildest, untouched, thriving, and protected under even the harshest conditions. Visiting the Snares is a rare privilege, a glimpse into a world where wildlife reigns supreme. Macquarie Island is Australia's only subantarctic island, located halfway between Tasmania and Antarctica. The whole island is an UNESCO World Heritage Site recognized for its unique geology and incredible biodiversity. Formed entirely from oceanic crust, it's the only place on Earth where rocks from the mantle are exposed above sea level. Sandy Bay is one of the island's most incredible landing sites. As soon as you step onto the black sand beach, you are surrounded by king penguins, the second largest penguin species. They stand nearly 3 feet tall and can dive over 300 meters deep in search of fish and squid. Unlike most penguins, they don't build nests but instead balance their egg on their feet, keeping it warm under a flap of skin. On land, they stand in dense groups, allowing a unique chance to observe their social behaviors. Beyond the beach, a short but steep hike leads to the royal penguin colony. Unlike the king penguin, the endemic royal penguins are much smaller, have bright yellow crests, and are found nowhere else on Earth. They nest in huge colonies, sometimes over 100,000 strong, and can dive more than 50 meters deep to catch fish, krill, and squid. They are loaded with personality and are very vocal, making them a fun species to observe.
10 o'clock at night here at Macquarie Island, and we have made a surprise excursion to Lusitania Bay. We just went on a Zodiac ride, but we got back on the ship and noticed the king penguins were swimming all the way out here, and they're playing in the water. So David and I are up on the deck photographing them, and they're hilarious.
Crossing the Southern Ocean from New Zealand to the Ross Sea is unlike any other voyage. The Southern Ocean encircles Antarctica and is the youngest and most powerful of Earth's oceans. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current drives relentless swells and icy winds. This is one of the most remote and unpredictable stretches of water on the planet, and it commands respect. Conditions can range from calm, gray stillness to multi-meter swells and forceful winds that remind you just how far you are from anywhere else. During sea days, the ship becomes your classroom. Expert guides and historians deliver daily briefings and in-depth presentations covering everything from polar history and ice dynamics to penguin behavior and the early explorers. For those who want to get involved, Heritage Expeditions also supports citizen science projects contributing to ongoing research in real time. Despite the wildness outside, life on board the Heritage Adventurer is comfortable. Warm cabins, cozy common areas, and an open bridge policy offer plenty of space to relax and learn. The food was a huge surprise. Each day, we were treated to beautifully presented dishes packed with flavors and fresh ingredients. Even after 28 days on board, we were never bored with the meals. As we approached Antarctica, we went through a mandatory biosecurity process, cleaning boots and outer gear to protect the pristine environment from introduced species and contaminants. It's a critical step for responsible travel in this fragile ecosystem. There's also time for downtime, whether it's a session in the sauna, a soak in the hot tub, or a quiet moment with a coffee in the lounge. But for me, some of the best moments were out on deck scanning the horizon for life. Many species of albatross, shearwaters, petrels, and even the occasional Antarctic prion ride the wind alongside the ship.
Woo! We got the mark of the penguin!
So we are here in the Southern Ocean, and we are just about to cross the Antarctic Circle. This is something that so few people get to do. Very rarely on the peninsula side, but what's cool about the Ross Sea is that anyone who takes this trip gets to cross the Antarctic Circle, because we're going way south. And we just had a celebration on board the ship. We got our marks of the penguin, which is essentially a pledge to protect and preserve Antarctica, which of course we will do, something we're very passionate about. But yeah, woo!
Big birds, one right there.
Yeah, there's so much ice, like we are starting to sail through ice. There's massive icebergs all around us. We are truly in the Antarctic now. days that we have been at sea since we last saw land, and Here we are.
She is.
The Admiralty Range of Antarctica has finally come into view, and we're hoping today that we get to make a landing at Cape Adare. We're not sure what the ice conditions are going to be like.
Yep.
We're going to be into the pack ice again in about an hour and a half. So let's cross our fingers. There's a big enough opening and we can make a landing.
Cape Adare is one of the most remote and historically significant places in Antarctica. Located at the northern tip of Victoria Land, it extends into the Ross Sea, surrounded by towering cliffs and an icy expanse. Reaching this isolated spot requires an expedition ship, and less than a handful of voyages venture here each season. If conditions allow a landing, stepping onto Cape Adare is an unforgettable experience.
We have made it to Cape Adare, and we're having a beautiful day. We were actually able to land. We are here in the largest Adeli penguin colony in the entire world. It's spectacular.
So this is an epic stop, especially for our first stop here on the rocky side of Antarctica, because there's a famous historical hut here.
So the first ever structure that was built in Antarctica was done by the Borchgrevink expedition, and they came right here to this spot in Cape Adare and built the very first structure, and it still stands today. So the Antarctic Heritage Trust has done a huge restoration, and we're going to the hut now to check it out.
The hut itself is remarkably well preserved. Its thick wooden walls still hold relics from the past, like old crates, rusted tools, and remnants of daily life left behind by Borchgrevink and his team. Despite the extreme weather, the structure remains a silent witness to one of Antarctica's earliest expeditions. Today, conservation efforts led by the Antarctic Heritage Trust ensure that this piece of history isn't lost to time.
Can't even with this experience. So good.
This is the largest colony in the world, with over 1 million birds nesting on Ridley Beach and beyond. The sights, sounds, and even the distinct smell create a sensory overload as penguins waddle, call, and dart in and out of the water. Surrounded by ice, crashing waves, and the constant activity of wildlife, Cape Adare feels like a lost place in time.
So after that incredible landing at Cape Adare, we are back on the ship, and yeah, we just sailed through an amazing ice floe, but we have to show you guys this because truly
Stunning.
Antarctica never gets old, which, I mean, obviously we keep going and we keep telling all of you to go, but we just want to share this with you. There's literally penguins, seals, all sorts of stuff going on. But seriously, we just sailed through all of this insanely beautiful ice back here. Antarctic continental landing here at Gondwana Scientific Research Base. This is a German-owned science base. They're not home at the moment, but that means that we get to get off on shore here and go for a little walk. This is a very unique spot, simply because, as you can see, there is no snow. This is due to some very strong katabatic winds that routinely come over the mountains and keep this area clear and warm. So it's actually a really unique little pocket here in Terra Nova Bay.
Guess what time it is? Polar plunge time!
Inexpressible Island sits on the edge of Terra Nova Bay and holds a harsh chapter of Antarctic history, where 6 men from the Scots expedition were forced to overwinter in an ice cave in 1912. We approached by ship, but fierce winds and heavy seas made landing impossible. Even from offshore, the island's barren, wind-blasted slopes and isolation were a powerful reminder of their survival story. The Drygalski ice tongue is one of Antarctica's most dramatic natural features, stretching over 70 kilometers into the Ross Sea. It is located along the coast of Victoria Land and is a massive floating extension of the David Glacier. It expands into the open ocean, surrounded by drifting icebergs and shifting sea ice. Approaching by ship, its sheer scale is overwhelming. Towering ice cliffs rise from the water, their jagged edges sculpted by relentless winds and shifting tides. Unlike icebergs that break free and drift, the ice tongue remains anchored to the glacier, slowly advancing over time as the glacier pushes forward.
It's 12:02 here in Antarctica, and take a look at the midnight sun.
McMurdo Sound is a stretch of water between Ross Island and the Antarctic mainland. It serves as a key access point for scientific research, bordered by permanent ice shelves and seasonal fast ice.
We are sailing into McMurdo Sound. It's unbelievable. So after a full day of sailing from the Drygalski ice tongue south, we've reached McMurdo Sound, and we are here at Cape Evans, which is the site of the historical Scott hut. And you can see it's behind me here. We've got Mount Erebus looming in the distance. It has been 100% preserved by the Antarctic Heritage Trust, so we're gonna go inside and check it out.
Stepping inside is like walking into the past. Shelves still hold tins of preserved food, tools lie untouched on workbenches, and wooden bunk beds remain just as Scott and his men left them. The long dining table, where they planned their expedition, still bears scratches from years of use. The hut was also used beyond Scott's expedition, later serving as a refuge for Shackleton's Ross Sea Party during their desperate struggle for survival. For decades, it was left to the elements until restoration efforts began. Today, thanks to the Antarctic Heritage Trust, it has been carefully preserved. Every artifact, from clothing to scientific equipment, has been stabilized to protect this critical piece of history. Standing inside, you feel the weight of the past as you step into the story of early Antarctic exploration. This is more than just a building. It's a testament to human endurance, ambition, and sacrifice in one of the harshest environments on Earth.
Here at Cape Royds, and we have made a landing on some space. Pretty cool. We're making our way to Shackleton's hut.
Shackleton's Nimrod hut stands alone on the barren, windswept landscape of Cape Royds, a remote stretch of volcanic rock on Ross Island in the shadow of Mount Erebus. Stepping inside, the hut feels like entering a time capsule, and the dim interior is filled with relics from over a century ago. Crates of supplies remain stacked against the walls. Bottles and tins of preserved food still sit on the shelves, and a simple iron stove stands at the center, once the only source of warmth in this frozen wilderness. It was here in 1908 that Ernest Shackleton and his team built this small wooden hut as the base for their British Antarctic expedition. This was the starting point of their daring attempt to reach the South Pole, an expedition that came heartbreakingly close before Shackleton made the difficult decision to turn back, just 97 miles from the pole, prioritizing the lives of his men over glory. Along the fast ice edge in a Zodiac, Adeli penguins gather in groups, resting on the ice or diving into the freezing water to hunt for krill and fish. But the highlight is seeing the unique Type C Orcas. This ecotype, also called Ross Sea Orcas, is the smallest of the killer whale types. They reach about 6 meters in length and are identified by their narrow, forward-slanting eye patches. Unlike other orca populations, Type C orcas primarily feed on fish, especially Antarctic toothfish, rather than marine mammals. They travel in small, tight-knit pods, using the ice edge for hunting and navigation. Their movements in the Ross Sea are still being studied, but they are believed to follow seasonal shifts in ice coverage.
We are in McMurdo Sound, and we just made a ice landing right here. We got penguins, and we're gonna go check out the ice bar. So we woke up this morning to a very blustery day, but that right there is the largest ice shelf in the world.
Covering an area roughly the size of France. It stretches along the southern edge of the Ross Sea, where it meets the open ocean in a towering ice front, some sections rising over 30 meters above the water. Beneath the surface, the ice extends hundreds of meters deep.
Just made a landing at Cape Adare, which is the second largest Adeli penguin colony in the Ross Sea. Let's check it out.
It is one of the continent's key Adeli penguin breeding sites and is home to a colony of over 40,000 pairs. The location is harsh, surrounded by glaciers and overlooked by Mount Bird, but in the short Antarctic summer, it becomes a hub of wildlife activity. Walking along the rocky terrain, the noise of the colony is constant. Adeli penguins are everywhere, tending to their chicks, calling to their mates, or moving between the nesting sites and the water. The large chicks, covered in thick gray down, gather in groups called creches while their parents head out to sea to hunt. These young birds are weeks away from molting into their waterproof feathers and becoming fully independent. Skua seabirds patrol the colony, waiting for an opportunity to snatch an unguarded egg or a weak chick. The cycle of life here is harsh but efficient, built around the short window of summer before the sea ice returns.
We are here at Hut Point, that is McMurdo Station. That's base behind me, and we are waiting to go inside of the Discovery Hut.
Stepping inside, the hut feels frozen in time. Wooden crates of supplies still sit stacked against the walls, and the remains of seal blubber, once burned for fuel, sit perfectly preserved. The large open space is lined with shelves and workbenches, where early explorers repaired equipment and prepared for their journeys across the ice. Everything inside tells the story of survival in one of the most hostile places on Earth. Despite being over a century old, Discovery Hut remains remarkably intact, thanks to conservation efforts by the Antarctic Heritage Trust. The structure has been stabilized, and every artifact inside has been carefully preserved to maintain the historical integrity of the site.
So after that middle of the night landing at Hut Point, we had a nice slow morning, and this afternoon the weather conditions have allowed us to stop here at Coulman Island.
Approaching by Zodiac, the first sign of life is the constant sound of Adeli penguins. Tens of thousands of them cover the rocky shorelines and hillsides, nesting in clusters on any patch of ice-free ground they can find. Some waddle between the colony and the water, others tend to their large down-covered chicks, which are nearly ready to molt into their adult feathers. Further along the shoreline, Weddell seals rest on the beach, conserving energy between hunting trips. These seals are well adapted to the extreme cold and navigate the ice waters with ease. Unlike the active and noisy penguins, the seals remain still, their thick blubber insulating them from the freezing temperatures. The Possession Islands are a remote, rocky chain off the coast of Victoria Land, surrounded by sea ice and home to large Adeli penguin colonies. Discovered by James Clark Ross in 1841, they're steeped in polar exploration history. When we arrived, the thick pack ice stretched in every direction, making a landing impossible. Cruising along the Victoria Land coast between the Possession Islands and Cape Adare was one of the most striking parts of our voyage. Towering mountain ranges rose straight from the sea with sharp and snow-covered peaks. Massive icebergs drifted past the ship, while Adeli penguins perched on the ice floes. The scenery felt endless, blue shadows on the ice, dark volcanic cliffs, and cloud banks rolling in from the mountains. Then, Cape Adare came into view one last time, its sharp point jutting out into the Ross Sea. As we turned the ship northward and left Cape Adare behind, the sea began to stretch open. The wind shifted, and the ice slowly gave way to open water. It was the moment we said goodbye to Antarctica. The silence, the scale, and the sense of remoteness stayed with us as we began the long journey back across the Southern Ocean. The Balleny Islands are a remote chain of volcanic islands in the Southern Ocean located 250 kilometers north of the Ross Sea Antarctic coast. Sitting just inside the Antarctic Circle, these islands are rarely visited due to their isolation and unpredictable weather. The only way to reach them is by expedition ship, with Zodiac cruises dependent on ice and sea conditions. Less than 50 people have ever landed here, as the islands spend the majority of the year completely surrounded by thick ice, making them inaccessible. If you get the chance to explore by Zodiac, the scale of the islands is overwhelming. Sheer cliffs plunge straight into the ocean, and glaciers calve small icebergs that drift silently in the water. Along the rocky shoreline, Adeli penguins gather in dense colonies. Chinstrap penguins mix among them, easily recognizable by the thin black line running under their chins. This is the only place on the Ross Sea side where you have the chance to see them. The sea around the islands is rough as the water slams directly into the islands without any breaks from the raging waves of the sea. The cold air is sharp, and the remoteness of the Balleny Islands is undeniable. With no research stations or permanent human presence, this is one of the wildest places in Antarctica. Heading north across the Southern Ocean provided some time to process everything we'd just experienced in Antarctica. Over 5 days, we rested, joined lectures, enjoyed the Antarctic Heritage Trust auction, took in a historic play, soaked in the hot tub, and watched seabirds follow the ship. It was a chance to reflect, reset, and get ready for what was next. As we neared Campbell Island, the first sign of land felt like the beginning of a new chapter and another remote world waiting to be explored. Campbell Island is the southernmost of New Zealand's Sub-Antarctic Islands, sitting over 600 kilometers south of the mainland. It's remote, wild, and only accessible by expedition ship, but for those who make the journey, the experience is unforgettable. One of the best ways to explore the island is by hiking the Lyall boardwalk. The trail winds through rugged terrain covered in megaherbs, which are giant flowering plants that thrive in the harsh subantarctic climate. Their broad leaves and vivid blooms add bursts of color to the windswept landscape. The Macquarie cushion, a dense, spongy plant, carpets the ground, helping to retain moisture in the harsh winds. These resilient species create a vibrant landscape, proving that life flourishes even in the most remote places. The real highlight is the southern royal albatross, one of the world's largest flying birds. These massive seabirds have wingspans that stretch over 3 meters and spend most of their lives at sea, only returning to Campbell Island to breed and nest on the open slopes. The boardwalk continues past the nesting albatross and leads to a high vantage point where you can take it all in. Enderby Island is one of the most accessible and wildlife-rich islands in New Zealand's Subantarctic. Sitting at the northern end of the Auckland Islands, it's located 465 kilometers from New Zealand and is only reachable by expedition ship. Way to explore is by hiking across the island from Sandy Bay. The trail winds through thick southern rata forest before climbing up and onto an open plateau. Along the way, southern royal albatross nest on the ground and take flight while effortlessly gliding on the wind. Reaching the other side of the island reveals a rugged coastline and dense fields of flowering megaherbs. It's possible to walk along the ridgeline, taking in the views and looking for light-mantled albatross that nest on the cliffs below you. The return route leads back to Sandy Bay, where the real wildlife spectacle unfolds. New Zealand sea lions, the rarest in the world, gather on the beach. Massive bulls patrol their territory and guard females, while younger males spar in the shallows. Among the sea lions, yellow-eyed penguins make their back and forth between the dense vegetation and the ocean. They are one of the rarest penguins on the planet. They move cautiously, waiting for the right moment to dash past the sea lions. Enderby Island is wild, remote, and alive, with wildlife at every turn. Today, it's uninhabited, but in the mid-19th century, a small British colony was established here, but it didn't last long. In 1849, the Hardwicke settlement was founded by the Southern Whale Fishery Company as part of an ambitious plan to colonize the Auckland Islands. Nearly 200 settlers arrived, including families, hoping to build a new community. But the reality was unforgiving.
It's literally the last sunset on our voyage, and it's been absolutely incredible 30 days.